Have you ever truly stopped to wonder what drives our deepest attractions, our connections? Is it, simply pure emotion? Or maybe a biological imperative we just can't control? Or perhaps it's something far more complex, like a rich tapestry woven from all these different threads. We often toss around terms like lust and love, right? Sometimes interchangeably. Other times we see them as total polar opposites. But what if the reality, as our sources today seem to suggest, is actually far more nuanced, more intricately intertwined than we've maybe ever imagined? Today on the deep dive, we're really embarking on an introspective journey. It's a bold exploration looking into the intricate and often surprising relationship between lust, love, and care. This isn't just about defining these powerful human experiences. It's about, dissecting the surprising ways they interweave, how they evolve, and how they profoundly shape our lives. We really aim to challenge some deeply ingrained assumptions today, and hopefully by the end of this deep dive, offer you a fresh, maybe more comprehensive perspective on these fundamental forces that drive human connection.
That's absolutely right. And for this deep dive, we've really pulled from quite a formidable stack of insightful sources. We're looking at comprehensive analyses like from lust to lasting care, sexual pleasure's role in attraction and connection, the biological threads of sex and love, and also the biology of love and lust. Our mission really is precisely to extract the core insights from all these diverse materials, to synthesize them, and ultimately to provide, well, a nuanced, robust, and comprehensive understanding of these powerful human experiences. We want to arm you, the listener, with clarity on how these forces might shape your own life and your relationships, equipping you to truly see, maybe, beneath the surface of attraction and attachment.
Absolutely. And this will be a journey of introspection, definitely some bold inquiry too. We'll be using philosophical frameworks, logical ones, real-world observations, all is presented in our sources, of course. We want to dissect these fundamental aspects of human connection. It's really about peeling back the layers, trying to understand the mechanics of attraction and attachment. So, are you ready? Okay, let's unpack this. Right, let's start at the very beginning with what our sources describe as, well, the primal pulse. Lust. Now, for many of us, the word lust probably carries a certain connotation, right? Maybe something base or even something we feel we should suppress. But the sources, they present it in a much more fundamental way, almost universal, actually. They describe lust as a biological driven and natural emotion, something present in every living being and, yeah, pervasive throughout nature itself. It's explicitly portrayed as a basic desire and it's inherently tied to sexual pleasure. It's almost presented as a given, a foundational element of existence.
Yeah. And what's truly fascinating here is how the sources firmly establish lust, not as some kind of deviation or a flaw or even something we should feel compelled to repress, but rather, as you said, a fundamental operating system of living beings. And the implication of this is pretty profound. It means it's not a learned behavior, right? Not something we just pick up from culture or society. Instead, it's inherent. It's universal. It's part of our very existence, much like, say, hunger or thirst. If you really consider it as a natural emotion present in every living being and in nature, it immediately elevates it beyond just like a human failing or a fleeting, undesirable urge. This perspective really positions lust as an essential foundational force. It drives interaction, propels reproduction, and ultimately, well, ensures the continuation of life. It's simply there, an integral part of the biological blueprint of being alive.
And they even go so far as to call it a gift from nature, which is, that's a remarkably strong and positive framing for something that in many societal contexts is often cast in a negative light, isn't it? Even shameful sometimes. So what does it truly mean for our understanding of attraction and connection if we begin to view lust not as a vice, but as this gift, as an initial, maybe even necessary motivator for a deeper connection? How does that reframe our internal dialogue around desire, you think?
Well, when it's described as a gift, it immediately suggests it serves a vital, positive purpose, something designed to benefit us, is that intrinsic spark, the initial engine that prompts individuals to seek out those powerful feelings associated with sexual pleasure. It's the immediate, often undeniable biological pull that initiates the very possibility of connection. In this perspective, it profoundly challenges those prevailing societal norms that often seek to restrict or judge or even shame this basic drive. Imagine, just for a second, a society that fully acknowledged lust as a natural, healthy starting point for connection, rather than something that must be overcome or hidden. It could radically change how we perceive attraction, right? How we openly talk about desire, and perhaps even how we consciously structure our relationships, moving beyond shame towards, well, understanding. Instead of fighting against a fundamental aspect of our biology, we might learn to understand it, integrate it more consciously, and maybe even harness its positive initiating power. it kind of frees us from the guilt often associated with that initial attraction, inviting us to explore its fundamental purpose in starting something potentially deeper.
That is a powerful shift in perspective, potentially quite liberating too. But here's another, maybe surprising, statement from the sources that brings up some intriguing implications. They declare that lust will never die because it's an emotion that's consistently desired. So if this fundamental drive truly never dies, what does that actually mean for our lifelong relationships, for our evolving desires? Does it imply we're sort of perpetually seeking new physical experiences? Or does this enduring aspect of lust maybe manifest differently over time, perhaps within a single committed connection?
Yeah, that raises a profoundly important question about the persistence and maybe the evolution of our biological needs. The sources are suggesting, I don't think, that we're doomed to a constant, insatiable pursuit of new partners, or that monogamy is inherently flawed. Not at all. Rather, they seem to imply that our fundamental biological drives don't simply vanish or get extinguished after a certain age, or after settling into a relationship. Instead, they probably evolve. They change in their expression, in their intensity, and in how they interplay with other, maybe more complex emotions like love or care. So, the enduring presence of this basic drive means that the initial biological attraction doesn't just disappear. It likely remains, perhaps in the background, a foundational element, one that can be acknowledged, integrated, and expressed within a broader, perhaps more mature emotional landscape. It's maybe more about the consistent desire to feel that spark, that vibrant energy, not necessarily a constant fulfillment of it in the exact same way it presented initially. It asks us to consider how we can keep that spark alive, maybe, or find new ways for it to manifest within the relationships we choose to build.
Right. So for you, the listener, how does this understanding of lust's persistence, this idea that it's an enduring natural part of us, impact how you view long-term relationships or even your own personal growth and evolving desires? Does it maybe relieve some of the pressure you might feel? Pressure to suppress a natural drive? Does it allow for greater self-acceptance, perhaps? Or does it add a new layer of complexity to managing expectations within sustained connections, prompting a deeper exploration of how desire evolves? It certainly gives us more food for thought about the dynamic and, well, ever-present nature of this primal urge. Okay, moving on from that raw, primal pulse of lust, let's now dig into the crucial and, as the sources describe it, vital role of sexual pleasure. Our sources highlight sexual pleasure as an absolutely vital factor in the processes of choosing, lusting, loving, or even caring for another person. This isn't just about physical sensation, is it? It seems to be presented as something much more foundational to attraction itself.
Yeah, stepping back for a moment to consider the bigger picture, sexual pleasure isn't just a byproduct, or consequence of attraction. It's presented more as an active ingredient, almost a catalyst, really, in the formation of various types of connections. The sources actually call it the initial driver. This inherent biological urge, which is inextricably tied to the experience of pleasure, is what initially compels us to seek desire in connections with others. It's the fundamental internal mechanism that draws us in. The basic desire for these feelings is apparently so strong, in fact, that the sources state lust will never die, precisely because it is an emotion consistently desired. So sexual pleasure provides the impetus for that initial, often captivating attraction. It powerfully sets the stage for everything that might follow in a relationship. It's like the immediate, undeniable incentive nature provides to initiate bonding.
That makes a lot of sense. It's the initial spark, like you said, that ignites the whole engine of human connection. But here's where it gets really interesting, and maybe a bit counterintuitive for some. The sources suggest that what begins as lust, rooted in sexual attraction and pleasure, can actually evolve into something as profound as caring or even love. How does something so intensely physical, often so focused on immediate gratification, transition into something as deep and enduring as care or love? What's the actual mechanism described for this, well, seemingly magical transformation?
Well, the mechanism cited in the sources is actually quite specific. It's pragmatic, and it feels logically progressive. They explain that if an individual develops a desire to spend more time with a particular person compared to others, so a sustained preferential desire for their presence, this behavioral shift can then convert that initial attraction into a care aspect. So it's not presented as a sudden magical leap from purely physical desire to deep affection. It's more a measurable, observable shift in focus and prioritization. When someone consistently prioritizes being with one specific person above others, that sustained engagement, that repeated proximity, and the mutual experiences shared within that time, that's what starts to cultivate deeper feelings. This sustained interaction allows for the gradual development of emotional bonds, shared history, and a growing concern for that person's well-being and happiness. It moves beyond mere physical attraction to a genuine, deep-seated sense of care. It's that consistent choice of companionship that deepens the bond.
That's a truly fascinating progression, from the physical to the emotional, driven by time and preference. This process, as it's described, it raises an important question for us to ponder, though. Is sexual pleasure a necessary first step for all types of deeper connections? Or is it merely one powerful but maybe not exclusive entry point? Could other forms of attraction, say intellectual compatibility or a shared sense of purpose, could they also serve as initial gateways to care and love? Perhaps even bypassing or, I don't know, resequencing the role of pure sexual pleasure as the primary initiator. The sources seem to emphasize this role as a powerful initial driver, but it makes you wonder about the broader landscape of connection.
You've absolutely hit on a crucial nuance there. While the sources clearly establish sexual pleasure as a vital and often primary initial driver, especially given lust's foundational role we just discussed, the phrasing "can evolve" does suggest a possibility, right? Not an absolute, immutable requirement for all deep connections. For relationships that begin with intense physical attraction, pleasure is indeed presented as the foundational gateway. That seems clear. However, the vastness of human experience surely suggests that for other relationships, perhaps an immediate intellectual spark, or a profound shared value, or even just a sense of mutual respect might be the primary initial draw. These alternative pathways could, over time, either lead to the development of sexual desire as part of the deepening bond, or they might forge a deep, non-sexual form of companionship and care. The sources strongly link the biological drive to this particular pathway, this pleasure pathway. But yeah, the human experience is indeed vast, and it's definitely worth considering these multifaceted entry points.
And speaking of that physical intensity, the sources make a really keen observation. They note that while the intense feelings associated with a sexual encounter, like orgasm, naturally diminish after the physical act, if there's something else liked about the person beyond just the physical activities, one might still desire their company again. This highlights a crucial distinction, doesn't it, between fleeting gratification and, well, enduring connection.
It absolutely does. It highlights that crucial distinction between momentary pleasure, which by its nature is often a peak transient experience that recedes, and sustained multifaceted attraction. For attraction to not only endure but to deepen into something more profound, there must be these something else factors. These are the non-sexual elements that make a person appealing, even when the immediate physical intensity has naturally passed. Consider what these something else factors might be in your own experiences, maybe. It could be their unique personality, their quick wit, their sense of humor. Maybe their sharp intelligence, a profound shared interest in something niche, deep emotional compatibility, or simply the unparalleled comfort and ease of their presence. These elements are the crucial, resilient threads that weave a connection beyond the purely physical. They make you desire their company and their presence, not just their body. They are the essential anchors, really, that allow a connection to weather the natural ebb and flow of physical intensity and form a lasting bond.
Right. So it's the intellectual, the emotional, the social compatibility that truly sustains the desire for someone's presence and company. However, the sources also point out a significant caveat here. They mention giving extra importance to sex more than that, then it becomes strong, which clearly implies a potential imbalance. What are the implications of overemphasizing sexual pleasure in a relationship, even if, as we've discussed, it's a natural gift from nature and a vital initial driver?
This insight from the sources is really critical, actually. It suggests that while sexual pleasure is indeed vital and a natural driver for connection, its role needs to be carefully balanced with other factors for a connection to be truly healthy, robust, and long-lasting. If it's given extra importance, meaning it disproportionately overshadows or takes precedence over the something else elements, those deeper personality, intellectual, and emotional connections, it can become overly strong, creating an imbalance. And an imbalance implies that the relationship might become excessively reliant on just one single aspect. This makes it vulnerable, doesn't it? Particularly when that specific element naturally fluctuates, or if other, more enduring forms of connection aren't consciously cultivated alongside it. Think of it like building a house. A strong foundation is essential, sure, but if only one wall is built to be disproportionately strong while others are neglected, the entire structure remains fragile. The sources seem to indicate that while sexual pleasure is a powerful and positive force, its overemphasis, to the exclusion of other relational pillars, can ultimately lead to fragility rather than enduring strength in the broader context of the relationship. It's really about finding that holistic equilibrium.
Okay, so for you, the listener, What stands out to you about this delicate balance? How do we consciously find that equilibrium in our own connections, appreciating the vital and powerful role of sexual pleasure without letting it dominate or inadvertently neglect the equally important non-sexual aspects that foster deeper, more enduring bonds? It sounds like a constant, delicate dance, doesn't it? One that requires ongoing awareness and, well, probably quite a bit of effort. Okay, building on that understanding of balance, let's now explore the actual journey of transformation, how initial lust can indeed evolve into lasting care and even what we understand as love. The sources explicitly state there's a direct interplay between lust and love, where what starts as pure biologically driven lust can genuinely evolve into profound caring. So what's the precise progression here? What's the critical turning point that shifts a purely physical attraction into something, well, deeper?
The sources are actually remarkably precise about this progression. They map out a pretty clear path from initial attraction to care. They describe the critical step as the desire to spend more time with a person comparatively more than anybody else. This isn't some nebulous emotional leap. It's presented as a measurable, observable shift in preference and behavior. It means that when someone consistently and preferentially prioritizes being with one particular person over all others, seeking their presence, their company, their shared experiences, that sustained engagement and desire for proximity actively cultivates deeper feelings. This consistent choice, born from that initial attraction, provides the fertile ground for emotional bonds to develop, for shared histories to form, and for a growing, genuine concern for that person's well-being. It moves beyond mere physical attraction to a profound sense of care, a measurable shift in focus where their happiness and presence become a significant priority.
That makes perfect sense. Sustained engagement really does create the conditions for deeper feelings to emerge. It's logical. But then the sources introduce another fascinating biological angle. They suggest that in adolescence, particularly around 18-19, hormones are described as being so strong that they lead to what they actually term innocent love. This implies a powerful, almost overwhelming biological foundation for those intense early romantic feelings we often experience.
Yeah, what's fascinating here is how the sources acknowledge a kind of biological overreaction during teenage years, implying a period of intense hormonal flux. This suggests that even early, seemingly pure or innocent love, often characterized by its all-consuming nature, its dramatic highs and lows, has extremely strong, almost overwhelming hormonal underpinnings. It's almost as if nature provides a powerful, chemically induced surge to fundamentally initiate the complex processes of pair bonding and attraction during a crucial developmental period. This sheer hormonal intensity can make those early romantic feelings feel extraordinarily vivid, all-encompassing, and intensely real, perhaps more so than in later life when other more nuanced factors come into play. It frames early love not just as a purely emotional or psychological experience, but as a biologically primed phenomenon, a natural mechanism designed to powerfully encourage disconnection at a formative stage of life.
Right. So understanding this biological surge, this intense hormonal priming, how does that influence our view of first loves, or those intensely passionate early attractions that often feel so formative? Does it diminish their power, making them seem merely a product of chemistry, or does it simply contextualize them, making us appreciate the sheer, undeniable force of biology at play during those formative years? It certainly adds a layer of understanding to the often bewildering intensity of teenage romance. Maybe even offers some compassion for our younger selves looking back.
I think it profoundly contextualizes it rather than diminishing it. I really do. It doesn't in any way negate the genuine emotional reality of those experiences or the powerful memories they create. Not at all. Instead, it helps us understand the immense biological currents that contribute to them. It allows us to appreciate why those feelings can be so overwhelming, so vivid, so all-consuming. Recognizing that a significant part of that intensity is, quite literally, hardwired into our developing brains and bodies, a powerful evolutionary mechanism. It offers a scientific lens to what often feels like pure magic or destiny or even inexplicable obsession. It shows how nature strategically primes us for connection, ensuring the perpetuation of our species through a highly potent intrinsic reward system.
And speaking of intense feelings and reward systems, perhaps one of the most striking and honestly provocative analogies presented in our sources is the portrayal of love itself, portraying it as a feeling that gives a high, drawing a direct parallel to the sensation experienced from powerful drugs like cocaine. I mean, that is a truly bold comparison. What does that fundamental analogy tell us about the core nature of love, according to these sources?
Well, if we connect this to the broader implications, this comparison to a drug high strongly suggests a powerful biological reward system is intimately at play within the experience of love. It's not just a metaphor. It implies that the intensely euphoric feelings of love are, in a very real sense, biologically driven, mirroring the pleasure derived from sexual activity or even, yes, the addictive qualities of certain substances. This means our bodies are likely releasing specific neurochemicals, like dopamine, which we know is closely associated with pleasure, motivation, and reward, and oxytocin, often dubbed the bonding hormone or cuddle chemical, due to its role in social bonding and trust, releasing these to create those intensely pleasurable and even addictive sensations. This biological high, then, essentially hardwires us to seek out and perpetuate deep connections. It reinforces bonding behaviors, making us strongly motivated to remain in relationships that benefit us and, from an evolutionary perspective, our species. It creates a powerful intrinsic motivation for forming and maintaining intimate bonds.
Wow. Okay, so for you, the listener, what does this provocative comparison, love as a biological high, akin to a drug, what does that mean for your understanding of love? Is it just a chemical reaction then, a fleeting neurochemical cocktail? Or is it something more profound that simply uses these powerful biological mechanisms to achieve its ends? Does it make love feel more or less special to you, knowing it might operate on a reward system similar to that of a drug? It certainly makes us question the very essence of what we consider to be love, and maybe how much agency we truly have in its powerful grip. Okay, moving beyond the purely physical now, our sources delve into what makes a connection truly last. They remind us that for sustained desire, it's not just about physical activities. There has to be something more. There must be something else liked about the person. So what are these crucial non-sexual factors that the sources highlight, and how do they become so pivotal once the initial physical intensity of attraction, well, naturally diminishes?
Yeah, this raises a really important question. What actually constitutes this something else? How do we even begin to prioritize it in our pursuit of deeper connection? These are, well, the myriad qualities that transcend immediate physical gratification. They become the enduring bedrock of sustained attraction and companionship. Think about those moments, after intense physical passion has maybe subsided. What makes you still want to curl up with that person, talk for hours, or just enjoy their quiet, comfortable presence? The sources suggest it's factors like intellectual compatibility, that profound satisfaction of having deep, engaging conversations, sharing complex ideas, exploring new perspectives together. Or it might be emotional resonance, a shared sense of humor that brings effortless laughter, maybe a profound empathy that fosters mutual understanding and support, or simply the feeling of being truly seen and accepted for who you are. It could also be shared values, aligned ambitions perhaps, or simply genuinely enjoying the other person's unique personality, their wit, their wisdom, their comforting presence. These elements become pivotal because, unlike the often fleeting intensity of purely physical urges, they offer a consistent, renewable, and often growing source of connection, enjoyment, and mutual enrichment. They are what make you want to be with someone, not just do something with them, regardless of the immediate physical context.
And the sources provide a really interesting, almost paradoxical example of this interplay, don't they? One scenario describes how wisdom and intelligence can make it hard to look at someone's body or think of them as merely an object of bodily pleasure, because their mind is just so captivating. Yet the same individual might still paradoxically state, I still want the body more. Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. How can both of these seemingly contradictory desires, a profound intellectual admiration and a strong physical pull, coexist, sometimes even in tension within one person's attraction?
Yeah, this specific example beautifully highlights the complex, multi-layered interplay between intellectual and physical attraction, and the distinct, sometimes conflicting personal preferences that can distinguish them, even when both are strongly present. It demonstrates that human attraction is far from monolithic. It's a dynamic, multidimensional experience. You can deeply admire and be intellectually stimulated by someone to the point where their intellect almost overrides purely physical considerations, making their words, their ideas, their wisdom the primary focus, almost blinding you to their physical form in that moment. Yet simultaneously, the foundational biological drive for physical connection, for the body, remains a distinct and powerful pull. It's not really a logical contradiction in the sense of one negating the other. It's more a testament to the multifaceted nature of human desire. It implies that while intellectual connection might elevate a person beyond being a mere object of physical desire, the physical aspect as a foundational biological drive can still maintain a strong independent pull, distinct from the intellectual admiration. It's about recognizing that different forms of attraction can coexist, sometimes in harmonious balance, sometimes in intriguing tension within the same individual, reflecting the complexity of our inner landscape, I suppose.
That nuanced view definitely points to the dynamic nature of attraction itself. The sources suggest that every person is subject to change, and our feelings and experiences will continually keep changing our opinion about someone else. What's truly fascinating here is the acknowledgement that attraction is fundamentally not a static state. It's not fixed, it's constantly being reshaped, not just by our own evolving selves, but also by the inevitable changes in others over time.
Exactly. And this inherent dynamism has profound implications for how we view long-term relationships and the very idea of a perfect partner. It means that the person you're deeply attracted to today might not be the exact same person tomorrow or next year or a decade from now. And crucially, neither are you. This continuous, inevitable evolution impacts that quest for 100% perfection in a partner, which the sources suggest is an impossible, perhaps even unhealthy, ideal. If everyone is in a constant state of flux and growth, then a fixed, unchanging ideal becomes fundamentally unattainable, unrealistic, really. Instead, this perspective encourages us to adopt a mindset of continuous discovery and adaptation within a relationship. It's about being open to the evolving nature of both yourself and your partner, and understanding that attraction, and thus love, requires ongoing engagement, reevaluation, and a willingness to grow together based on these inevitable transformations. A successful, lasting connection, then, might be one that can not only accommodate but actively celebrate and grow with these inherent changes, finding new dimensions of attraction as individuals evolve.
And tying directly into that idea of internal evolving change, the sources introduce another powerful and deeply introspective concept. Loving anybody or choosing anybody is a function of your own assessment of who you are. They go even further, emphasizing that it has nothing to do with the other person. I mean,
Yeah.
this is a profoundly internal, almost radically self-referential idea, isn't it?
It certainly raises an important and perhaps uncomfortable question for many of us. How much of our attraction is truly about the other person versus a profound reflection of our own inner landscape? This perspective implies that our choices in love and attraction are deeply fundamentally tied to our self-perception, our evolving desires, our unmet needs perhaps, and our current phase of personal growth. It suggests that what we find attractive in others often mirrors something within ourselves, or maybe fulfills a deeply held need, or resonates with where we are in our own journey at that moment. If it truly has nothing to do with the other person and its fundamental genesis, then our attractions become incredibly powerful insights into our own minds, our unconscious patterns, and our evolving identity. It shifts the focus from solely evaluating a potential partner on their external qualities to a more internal assessment. What does this attraction tell me about myself? It's a call for radical self-awareness and self-knowledge in the complex and often perplexing realm of relationships. Our desires become, in a way, a mirror to our soul.
Right, now let's wade into some of the more, let's say, provocative and convention-challenging philosophical stances presented in our sources. These really push the boundaries of how we typically view love and relationships. One perspective offers a really bold, almost defiant assertion. Lust is the only good emotion. Love is a fake emotion. Wow, that's quite a statement. It seems to dismantle centuries of romantic ideals in one sentence.
Yeah, stepping back for a moment, this is certainly a very reductionist viewpoint, but it's also powerfully direct and unapologetic about human emotions. This perspective likely stems from a belief in the inherent honesty, maybe the clarity and the straightforwardness of fundamental biological drives like lust. Lust, as we discussed, is clear. It's undeniable. It's universally experienced in its primary form. Love, in this particular viewpoint, might be seen as a complex societal construct, an emotion often burdened by external expectations, cultural norms, idealizations, maybe even self-deception, all of which can ultimately lead to disappointment or inauthenticity. This perspective implies that sexual pleasure, as that raw gift from nature, is pure, unadulterated, inherently truthful. Layering on the complexities and societal demands of love can, in this view, introduce extra importance, or an artificiality that potentially makes the connection less genuine, more problematic, or even hypocritical. It champions the raw, unvarnished truth of biological desire over what it perceives as a manufactured or overly complicated sentiment. It's a very stark and unromantic, yes, but perhaps brutally honest, interpretation.
And this philosophical stance seems to extend to principles that sound a bit like objectivism applied to relationships, as described in the sources. Like, I will not live for the sake of anyone else, neither will ask the other person to live for my sake. And further, in love, you should leave them free, with the stark declaration that possession is the worst form of love. This runs remarkably counter to so many traditional romantic ideas of love, doesn't it? Which often involve a degree of self-sacrifice or codependency or a deep intertwining of lives.
Right. For those maybe unfamiliar with specific philosophical underpinnings, objectivism here as applied to relationships, generally refers to a framework that prioritizes individual self-interest, rational egoism, and independent thought. When these principles are brought into the realm of intimate connection, the fascinating aspect is the profound emphasis on mutual independence, rather than traditional notions of ownership, codependency, or self-abnegation as a higher, maybe more authentic form of relating. This philosophical approach champions individual autonomy and freedom within a connection. It fundamentally suggests that true love isn't about merging identities, sacrificing oneself for another, or becoming two halves of a whole. Instead, it's about two complete, whole, independent individuals freely choosing to come together, freely and without obligation or possessiveness. The statement, "Possession is the worst form of love," strongly advocates against the idea of treating another person as property, or an extension of oneself, or just a means to one's own fulfillment. It's a radical call for unwavering respect for individual sovereignty, even within the most intimate of bonds, suggesting that true connection flourishes in freedom, not constraint.
It definitely challenges that whole notion of my other half or even soulmate. But how realistic or sustainable is this kind of freedom-centric relationship in practice? While it sounds incredibly appealing in theory, does it truly allow for the kind of deep emotional intimacy, vulnerability, and mutual reliance that many, perhaps most, people seek and ultimately need in long-term partnerships?
That's a crucial and deeply practical question. Absolutely. While theoretically ideal for individual freedom and self-actualization, its practical application can indeed be profoundly challenging. Precisely because human beings are, by their very nature, social creatures who often seek emotional security, reassurance, and a degree of interdependence in their closest bonds. This perspective suggests a very high degree of maturity and self-awareness, I think, where individuals are so secure in themselves that they can truly offer and receive freedom without fear of abandonment or loss. It demands exceptionally high levels of transparent communication, unwavering trust, and a constant conscious reaffirmation of the choice to be together. Because traditional relationship structures often rely on implicit expectations that this philosophy explicitly rejects, it's a bold, almost revolutionary reimagining of commitment, one that values continuous personal growth and self-actualization, perhaps above traditional notions of romantic entanglement and fusion.
The sources also present another view that seems to strip away some of the romanticized notions of love, suggesting that love can be momentary, instantaneous only for those pockets, and even mentioning the concept of manipulating to get what best I can from her. These ideas sound almost transactional, starkly different from idealistic portrayals we often see.
Yeah, this raises an important and perhaps uncomfortable question for our conventional understanding of love, doesn't it? Does this perspective diminish love, reducing it to something purely transactional? Or does it offer a stark, if perhaps uncomfortable, honesty about the underlying motivations in human interaction? The momentary aspect might relate back to that high analogy we discussed earlier, suggesting that love's intensity, its peak euphoria, can indeed be episodic rather than a constant, unwavering state, implying that love exists in intense, perhaps fleeting pockets of profound connection or euphoria. And the idea of manipulating, even in subtle ways, like influencing conversations to evoke a desired smile or response, powerfully challenges romantic ideals by framing intimate interactions through a lens of benefit extraction, whether conscious or unconscious. Now, this doesn't necessarily imply malice or ill intent. It could simply be an acknowledgement of how human beings naturally, almost instinctively, seek what benefits them, what brings them pleasure or satisfaction, even in the context of affection and intimacy. It's a very pragmatic and some might even say cynical view, but one that attempts to be ruthlessly honest about underlying human motivations.
And finally, on this challenging front of expectations, the sources touch on the common pitfall of expectation and jealousy, stating that when unknown expectation is suddenly cut off, jealousy is described as a very normal interim reaction.
Right? If we consider the broader implications here, it suggests that a significant, perhaps primary source of friction and distress in relationships arises not from what is, but from what we expect it to be. Unknown expectations. Those are the unarticulated, often unconscious desires, beliefs, or implicit contracts we hold about how a relationship should function or how a person should behave. When these unacknowledged expectations are unmet, disappointed, or suddenly severed by reality, the natural, indeed normal, emotional response can be jealousy. This implies that effectively managing expectations, bringing them into conscious awareness, openly discussing them with a partner, negotiating them, or even consciously letting go of unrealistic ones is absolutely crucial for navigating the complex and often turbulent emotional landscape of love and desire. It frames jealousy less as a direct response to an external event and more as a symptom of unmet internal frameworks. a reaction to the disruption of an anticipated reality. Hashtag 6, sustaining connection in a changing world.
Okay, moving on to how we sustain connection and navigate the inherent fluidity of human relationships in a world where everything is in flux. The sources bring up that old adage, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, which essentially means intentions alone aren't enough, outcomes really matter. How does this pragmatic principle apply to the complex dynamics of relationships?
Well, what's truly fascinating here is the practical, almost empirical approach to relationships that this adage implies. It suggests that if you're consistently not achieving the desired outcome in a connection, if deep intimacy isn't being built, if the relationship isn't flourishing in the way you hope, then your methods are wrong or what you are doing is wrong, regardless of how good your intentions might be. It profoundly shifts the focus from mere good intentions to tangible, observable results. In the context of love and care, this could mean that simply meaning well isn't sufficient for a relationship to thrive. It calls for rigorous self-introspection on one's actions, communication styles, emotional contributions, and the actual dynamics at play. It's less about abstract feelings and more about the effectiveness of one's approach in truly fostering the kind of vibrant, healthy, and enduring connection one desires. It's a pragmatic call to align intention with undeniable impact, to constantly evaluate and adjust our relational strategies based on real-world outcomes.
That's a tough but remarkably fair assessment, I suppose. Results matter. And beyond actions, the sources explore the critical role of intellect and other factors, education, or like there are talents, in maintaining conversations and connections. Emphasizing the profound impact of her words and her wisdom and her intelligence, this clearly points to the enduring power of cognitive and intellectual connection in sustaining attraction.
Yeah, and this raises an important question for long-term relationships. How does the cognitive aspect of attraction evolve over time, and perhaps even become more vital, arguably more vital, than initial physical draws? As physical intensity may naturally ebb and flow with time and familiarity, the ability to consistently engage intellectually, to share ideas, to be stimulated and challenged by another person's wisdom, intelligence, and unique talents becomes absolutely paramount for sustained interest and companionship. The sources strongly imply that a lack of intellectual depth or conversational compatibility can severely limit the duration and quality of engagement, making interactions mundane or ultimately unfulfilling. In essence, it suggests that an active, stimulating mind, a wellspring of engaging thoughts and perspectives, is a powerful and profoundly lasting source of attraction, capable of maintaining a connection even when other, more ephemeral factors might diminish. It's about the deep, ongoing joy of sustained, enriching conversation and mutual intellectual growth that keeps the connection fresh and vibrant.
So a captivating mind can indeed be as, or arguably even more compelling than a captivating body in the long run. But then we also have the seemingly contradictory idea from the sources that familiarity breeds contempt and that the person is changing. This highlights the inherent challenges. What happens when the familiar becomes mundane or when people simply grow apart due to their individual evolutions?
Exactly. This insight directly addresses the inherent, often uncomfortable challenges of long-term relationships, given the constant process of individual evolution. If both individuals in a relationship are continuously changing, growing, and evolving, the very dynamic of the relationship itself must also be inherently flexible and adaptable. The adage, familiarity breeds contempt, suggests that overexposure, a lack of newness, or a failure to continually discover new facets of a partner can lead to boredom, indifference, or even resentment. This fundamentally challenges the notion that a relationship can simply exist on autopilot, sustained purely by initial momentum. It means that ongoing conscious effort, perhaps a deliberate injection of new shared experiences, a renewed sense of curiosity about one another, or a conscious reappreciation of who the other person is becoming, is profoundly necessary to counteract the natural tendency for novelty to fade and for people to potentially grow in different directions. It emphatically underscores the active, continuous work involved in maintaining a vibrant, evolving connection.
That leads to a fundamental, almost existential tension, doesn't it? How do we truly reconcile the powerful biological drive for newness, that persistent desire for the spark of lust that our sources claim will never die, with the deeply human desire for stability, profound security, and lasting care within a committed relationship? Is it about finding newness within the existing relationship, or is it a lifelong negotiation between these two powerful, often conflicting forces?
I think it's precisely that lifelong, dynamic negotiation, a continuous dance between seemingly opposing forces. The sources suggest that lust will never die, implying a persistent biological drive for pleasure and attraction, which often, by its very nature, seeks novelty and fresh experiences. At the same time, human beings deeply crave stability, a sense of belonging, profound emotional connection, and the security of a consistent bond. Reconciling these often means cultivating conscious effort within a long-term relationship to keep curiosity alive, to continuously explore new facets of one another's evolving selves, and to find new, exciting ways to engage and appreciate the person right in front of you. It's about not letting the familiar become stagnant, but rather transforming the familiar landscape into an ever-deepening terrain for continuous mutual discovery. It's not about eradicating the fundamental desire for newness, but about consciously directing that vital energy into discovering new dimensions within its existing cherished bond. Allowing love to evolve and deepen in unexpected, hopefully wonderful ways. Hashtag tag tag out tag outro.
Wow. We've certainly covered a tremendous amount of ground in this deep dive, from the raw, primal pulse of lust, which our sources define as a powerful biological imperative, even a gift from nature, serving as an initial driver for connection, all the way to the complex, rich tapestry of love and care. We've explored sexual pleasure's pivotal role, acknowledging it as both an essential initial catalyst and a factor that, if overemphasized, can potentially lead to imbalance within a connection. And we've journeyed through those surprising yet logical pathways from initial lust to deep care and profound love, highlighting how a sustained desire for someone's company can fundamentally transform the very nature of attraction.
Yeah, and we've also delved into the multifaceted nature of attraction, emphasizing that it extends far beyond the purely physical, intricately incorporating intellectual connection, profound wisdom, shared values, and even that crucial aspect of self-assessment and our choices of who we connect with. We've bravely challenged conventional notions too, considering provocative perspectives that see lust as the sole good emotion and love as perhaps fake. Alongside philosophical stances on radical freedom and the inherently momentary nature of intense love, these sources have truly opened up new, sometimes uncomfortable, but always enlightening ways of thinking about our most intimate and fundamental human bonds.
Yeah, absolutely. This deep dive has hopefully given you, the listener, a more robust and nuanced framework for understanding the powerful, often hidden forces that shape our most intimate connections. It's really about empowering you with a deeper level of knowledge and self-awareness, helping you navigate your own relationships with maybe greater clarity, manage expectations more effectively, and truly appreciate the complex and beautiful interplay of biology, raw emotion, conscious choice, and evolving self-identity that defines human bonding. So as we wrap up, here's a final provocative thought for your reflection. If our deepest attractions are rooted in fundamental biology, and love itself can be described as a powerful high akin to a drug, what does this truly mean for our personal agency in choosing and sustaining love? Does understanding these biological realities free us from unrealistic expectations and romantic illusions, grounding us in a more practical truth? Or does it perhaps challenge us even more profoundly to consciously build something enduring and profound that transcends those fleeting biological impulses, shaping it with intention and commitment? That's definitely something for you to ponder as you continue your own deep dive into the extraordinary complexities of the human heart.